Welcome to the Big Play Cleveland Show. I'm Gabriella Cruz alongside Chris McNeil, Nick Padone. We are coming off of an interesting Browns preseason game. We'll be recapping. The Guardians also kind of weird. They've been a little hot and cold, guys, like a little win streak and then loss streak, win streak, loss streak. We'll get into that. But hey, on the bright side, we're 1 week closer to our first Big Play Golf Invitational. I don't know, do we have any new participant announcements?
I think one of them we'll chat with later in the show today is Jensen Lewis is going to be there hanging out with us. So I think we're fully announced, guys, and we're going to have more special guests that aren't announced that will just show up to Little Mountain. But I mean, if you want to come golf with us on this show, Greg Williams and Blake and Chris, we did that. It was a blast. Hanford Dixon, the Cribs. It's going to be an all-out banger at Little Mountain, August 31st. Go get your tickets today at bigplay.com.
Did you guys
Big Play Golf Outing is going to be fun.
Did you guys see Dave's, he tweeted that hat, that custom Big Play hat?
Yes.
Baby blue.
Pretty
I don't know.
sweet.
I'm not like a huge hat wearer, but it's really sick. I was like, okay, Papa Cruz is going to need one of those.
Yeah, we have like the offices here at Burke are just like slowly becoming over flooded with like swag and gifts that are going to be given away at this golf outing. The hats arrived. We've got coolers coming in by like the box load. So
yes,
it is going to be a very fun time, and get your tickets at bigplay.com because when you're there are going to be people that arrive and activities that arise that are going to surprise some people. So it'll be cool.
Yep.
At Jimmy Hanlon's house up there at Little Mountain. So
yeah,
hope to see all of you out there playing golf with us.
And recording an episode of Pin Shot out there too. So
going to be having a lot of fun out there. So come join us, sign up online.
It'll be a lot of fun. And we're 1 week closer to the Brown season actually starting, which is cool. You know, these preseason games, Chris, I think I find a way to get myself hooked every year. Football's back. We finally get a little bit of a rush. I understand going in, it's going to be mostly backups, but once those games actually transpire, I'm like, man, this is brutal.
It's
Come
just
third,
backups
fourth quarter,
running into each other, and it's tough to watch.
And they're not showing us anything. Like, we're so excited, and rightfully so, about this new Browns offense with Ken Dorsey, but they are not showcasing anything. Everything's going to be kept under wraps until week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys. So yes, we have a preseason game late this week, might I add, against Seattle. 10 o'clock kick against the Seahawks.
Will we see Deshaun?
We'll get into that later in the show. Because that's going to be the big question.
That's going to be the question. That's going to be a lingering
week.
question all week.
We've got injured OTs and
the other thing we're into is fantasy football. Yeah. Nick, I know it's real early, but I already had my draft yesterday.
Very early. That's like sacrilege.
Is that way too early?
That's way too early. You're rolling the dice, Chris, on some injuries, some holdouts.
Loser.
You don't know what could happen
from
now till the first week of September. You could have some serious damage out there.
From a practical standpoint, I'm a dad. My kids are going back to school, so things are going to get very busy for me the next few weeks. So we wanted to kind of get this out of the way as one last hurrah for summer, get our draft out of the way. But we're going to have a great guest today who's going to break down fantasy for us, and for everybody who's out there who hasn't drafted yet, he's going to give you some insights and what to look for when you're doing your draft.
Yeah, so packed show. We're hitting fantasy football. We're hitting Guardians with Jensen Lewis. We're also, Chris, going to hit your visit at Affinity Whole Health,
which
I'm very excited. We've got footage from that visit, so you guys can confirm that Reflog himself actually went out there and visited Affinity. Packed show for
Gab, the Cribses, we were all out there to do our evaluations.
Yeah, and glad to see and glad to hear that went well. So we will inform the masses on how that went. More of the Big Play Cleveland Show. We're getting you guys prepped for fantasy football with our guy Kev, Roto Surgeon. Don't go anywhere. More of the Big Play Cleveland Show right after this.
Welcome back to the Big Play Cleveland Show. We are ready for our Garage Beer featured interview. We are welcoming our special guest, fantasy football writer for Roto Baller. It's Kev Masarajan, the at Roto Surgeon on X, and we're super excited to have you. Thanks for joining us here virtually. He's way on the West Coast, so this was kind of an early rise for you.
Gabby, Nick, Reflog, thank you guys for having me on. It's exciting to talk ball with the Cleveland gang.
Yeah, the Browns got a couple new offensive weapons this season. What are you expecting fantasy-wise out of Jerry Jeudy?
I've always been someone who's fallen for Jerry Jeudy, and I'm excited if Deshaun Watson's good. It all comes back to Deshaun Watson. none of this matters if Deshaun Watson isn't a capable quarterback. Because Jerry Jeudy, first round pick, fantastic talent, can get open at will. But if Deshaun Watson can't get him the ball, I'm not excited about it. But I will be drafting him because his price is so cheap after so many years of disappointment. And, changes of scenery can definitely help guys like him who, it's not like he's played with good quarterbacks for the past however many, like 4 years or so. So if Deshaun Watson can be an average NFL quarterback, I'm very excited about Jeudy.
So I had my draft really early this year. We actually did it last night. And I got a few Browns. I usually try and stay away from the Cleveland Browns, but I always end up gravitating back and taking some Browns when I actually push comes to shove doing the draft. One of those that I got later on was Nick Chubb. Now, how long for people who are looking to draft a guy like Nick Chubb, who's obviously injured, questions about when he's going to come back, questions about his effectiveness when he does come back. If you're in fantasy, how long do you wait? If he's still on the board, do you grab him?
If your league has an IR spot, you can take him in the top, 10 rounds. So like, let's say round 9, round 10. If you're like, I have to have Nick Chubb, I don't mind that. Stash him on IR. He'll be back. He's probably going to start on PUP. It's just what it seems like. They're slow playing him. Stefanski made it seem like, we want him for the long haul, even though he's 27, 28 now. But, he's Nick Chubb, the closest thing to a cyborg we have in the NFL. In half PPR leagues, standard leagues, which aren't as standard anymore, I would absolutely be stashing him because, he could be that playoff league winner you need.
Yeah.
Full PPR leagues, I'd probably stay away just because he doesn't really catch passes like obviously like a CMC or a Saquon. So it just depends on your league.
Staying on the Browns, another guy I took was David Njoku. Where do you rank him amongst tight ends this season?
He was the tight end 1 in the second half of last season, from week 8 to week 18, actually.
Flacco fever, baby.
That's right.
Flacco revitalized him. Flacco allowed him to really break out. And kind of the issue with Watson in the first half was a low ADOT. They weren't throwing him the ball deep. He had a 1.4 ADOT in those first 8 weeks. So if Stefanski and the Browns figure out, hey, this worked with Flacco, this can work with Watson, Njoku should be a top 8 tight end. He should be drafted ahead of Evan Engram in some leagues. Even Dalton Kincaid. I'm not a Dalton Kincaid guy. Everybody knows that on Twitter, but I think Njoku should be up there with those top 5 tight ends possibly.
Love to hear that. Hey, outside of just Cleveland for a second, is there somebody in the first round that you think people have just fallen in love with way too quickly? Maybe doesn't warrant a first round, top 10, top 12 projection, or a guy that if you do select with that pick, you're really kind of taking a flyer on?
I wouldn't say no one's taking a flyer on a first round pick. That's a little much, but definitely Puka Nacua, and I say this as an LA guy. I'm saying this to Cleveland guys as an LA guy. Puka's fantastic. He's a fringe elite wide receiver in the NFL already. However, he's dealing with a knee injury coming into the season, so he's missing all of preseason essentially. Cooper Kupp, once he returned, Puka Nacua was not a wide receiver 1 in points per game for that 12 game or so stretch. And Kupp looks good. He looks healthy. He has that connection with Stafford as well. Wide receiver 1, really only 1 season of production. You're paying a high price for Puka in the first round. I probably wouldn't even take him in the second round outside of full PPR leagues because it's not like he scored a lot of touchdowns. So if it's him and Kupp all year, it could be not to say a lot of mouths to feed, but the ball can go either way any game.
For sure. And then when you look at that receiver position, I feel like especially early on, there's a bunch of guys that are in weird positions with their contracts. Yeah. Justin Jefferson got paid, and now Brandon Ayuk wants paid. Jamar Chase wants paid. CeeDee Lamb wants paid. None of these guys have practiced or played in preseason yet at all either, as they're all kind of holdouts or hold-ins. How do you approach drafting guys like that where there is a little bit of uncertainty, but they're probably going to play, right?
If they're cheap enough, I'm always game for elite talent. Jamar Chase, I'm not going to say no to Jamar Chase just because he's not practicing. I think he missed out on his entire junior season in college and was a wide receiver 1. I think he had the best rookie wide receiver season of all time up to that point, prior to Puka last year. So that's a little ironic. Yeah, so I have no issue with someone like Chase who has that history. Ayuk, if he's on the Steelers, I'm not as interested in a Brandon Ayuk because of their quarterbacks. And I love Justin Fields. I will be a Justin Fields truther until the day I die. But I do not want when he has two receivers. I love DJ Moore last year, but Pickens Ayuk is a lot tougher with Ayuk.
Hey, Kev, how about Browns defense? They were the truth in real life. What about fantasy football?
I think they definitely have. I mean, they're as viable as any of the top defenses. Decent schedule to start outside of, I'd say, the first 2 weeks. Dallas and Jacksonville to start the year. It's not the easiest matchups to start with, but overall, I mean, a well-rounded defense, very talented. I wouldn't go targeting them. The Seahawks defense gets two crazy matchups to start the season. I think it's Denver and Patriots, week 1, week 2. So that's where I'd lean for defense.
And then, quarterback is always a fun thing. With fantasy, a lot of people like to wait. Of course, you've always got the guys in the league that just go super early and get Mahomes or Josh Allen. Where should Browns fans kind of expect Deshaun Watson? Because of a lot of us here, Kev, to give you kind of the inside, you were talking an LA guy to Cleveland. Let me tell you, Cleveland to LA, we're waiting to see, the old Deshaun Watson, the Houston Texans Deshaun Watson. We hope we're getting that this year with the addition of Jerry Jeudy and, the new offensive coordinator and the way that they want to run things. But from an on-field perspective, we're not sure. Is that kind of how the fantasy world is treating Deshaun Watson as well, as kind of not sure if he's a viable fantasy quarterback?
We know as much as you guys probably know more because you guys see practices or you guys are more tuned in with stuff like that. It's been 2 years, 12 games. Not seen much. I have a take, somewhat nuclear, but I think we see Jameis Winston in the second half. Winston looked good with the Saints. He's had ups and downs. He could still throw a football, whereas we don't know if Deshaun Watson can still throw a football. I'm drafting as if Jameis Winston is the quarterback in the second half, and that's why I like Jeudy and Njoku. Chubb, it's not like Winston dumps off too much, but I'm actually heavily invested in Njoku and Jeudy just because they're so cheap, and I think if Jameis Winston takes over, he could throw for 30 touchdowns and 4,500 yards across a full season, obviously. But yeah, I'm not a believer in Watson anymore, sadly. Well, not really sadly given his conditions, but I bought in last year. How about that? I got burned.
You already mentioned with the Steelers, you're a Justin Fields truther. Any thoughts on Russell Wilson? It sounds like they may be leaning towards Russell Wilson right now as their starting quarterback. Do you think that experiment's going to end up paying off, working out for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Losing Jalen Warren is kind of big because going with Wilson will be banking heavily on good O-line play, a really good run game, and really good play action. We've seen Justin Fields, even in this preseason, run crazy. So if Wilson can't add much with his legs, which have been diminishing for the past few years, and that's why he hasn't been the magical Russell Wilson of old, I think we see Fields too in the second half. I think quarterback changes are coming beyond just the rookies that are knocking on the door, because the league can only go with bad quarterback play for so long. As you guys know, it's a quarterback-driven league. It's what it takes to win. Look at Mahomes. He's the guy, and he's going to remain the guy. You got to beat the guy.
Kev, how do you go about ranking rookies compared to proven veterans, guys that we've seen around before? Here in Ohio, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of interest in my drafts in Marvin Harrison Jr., is the big name, but some of the other rookies are definitely fantasy draftable. How do you go about evaluating which rookie you actually want on your fantasy team and guys that might just be a big name to kind of stay away from?
Malik Neighbors is the big, the hype guy this preseason. Even Marvin Harrison Jr., everybody's expecting him to be good. We haven't really seen too many practice clips, and that doesn't really matter to me. But Malik Neighbors is everyone's talking about Malik Neighbors. And I'm like, Daniel Jones is still his quarterback. And I know Daniel Jones just played his first game in forever because he tore his ACL and whatnot, but it's hard to be an elite wide receiver in fantasy without at least average quarterback play. I'm going to probably stay away from Neighbors at his price. Whereas a Rome Odunze, who I can draft and put on my bench and wait until maybe, not to say, we want Keenan Allen or DJ Moore to get hurt, but if that were to happen, or if Rome Odunze were to surpass Keenan Allen. I'm getting a potential starting wide receiver in round 8. That sounds good to me. So Odunze, Keon Coleman, Brian Thomas Jr., guys who go later than that Malik Neighbors range, I'm very interested in. And then rookie running backs, I'm just going to fill my bench with Blake Corums, Trey Bensons, Ray Davises. Love those guys because it costs me almost nothing and I get all the upside.
Yeah.
Kev Masarajan, thanks for joining us. We're going to take a quick break. We want to pick your brain a little bit more right after this. Welcome back to the Big Play Cleveland Show. We are joined by, I'm going to pronounce your name. I know I've been overthinking it, Kev, but Masarajan. We got to talk about it too. It's, what are you?
What am I? That could go a lot of ways, but I am Armenian.
He's like talented.
Fantasy expert.
Fantasy expert. Besides all that you are.
Sweeney.
I feel like because of his high-end background that he's chosen for us, we were all like giving him all this glamour pre-show. We're like, wow, look at this amazing background. Now we need to know a little insight on because it's such a fun word to say, Masarajan. And rotosurgeon is your ad. I like what you did there.
Yeah, I mean, just to make it easier since college, I just said my surgeon. You don't want to sell yourself short. You don't want to sell your name short, but sometimes it's just easier to not get your name butchered, especially in class. So, yeah. And then the background is just StreamYard. Do you guys want to see, like, my couch in my room?
Wow, it's awesome.
And then rotosurgeon is easy to understand, man. Helping us win our fantasy football leagues over here, and we appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, how long have you been writing, by the way?
Oh, that's a good question. I think 2018 was the first year I started writing. I started playing around 2013 in college. My buddy just invited me to a fantasy league. I thought it sounded crazy. I was like, what are you talking about? Then I realized I've been doing this forever since like Madden. Like I would do fantasy drafts, quote unquote, building my own teams, my own rosters on Madden. Getting to do that somewhat in real life and get points, maybe win money. It's the best thing ever. I love fantasy football, baseball, basketball. It's great stuff.
Now, do you guys, because I remember when McNeil got really into March Madness, and obviously we took a ton of notes. Well, he did. And it was like a little doctor's notes and things. Does your preparation process for fantasy football look anything like a bunch of documented things? Like, how do you stay organized with all of your data?
I do have a Patreon where a lot of my information and stream of thought goes. So I'll put all of my rankings for any sort of half PPR, full PPR, super flex, every type of format outside the world. I'll just throw it on there for people to view. I'll get some feedback too, what people want to see from me. So I kind of store it all on my Patreon, rankings, projections, and then I'll just yap about teams and kind of break down each position group and my expectations. Like the Cleveland Browns, I went deep on just because it's such an interesting team for the 2024 season. It feels like it could go either way. And again, it all comes down to Watson because the defense looks good. The skill group looks good. The O-line looks good. The running back room, even without Chubb, like Ford looked solid last year. Deonta Foreman, if he's healthy, very stable backup. Everything for the Browns is good. It's just quarterback, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Kev, we appreciate you joining us. One of the things that I love about you is you always have some sort of sleepers that people should be looking out for, names that are deep down on that list when you get late into the rounds that you're really scrolling down to find. Who are some sleepers that people should be monitoring this year before they sit down and do their fantasy draft?
You guys won't want to hear it, but Rashad Bateman, Ravens wide receiver, coming into, I believe it's year 5 now, or year 4 or year 5. He's had a litany of issues, injuries throughout his career. Hernia coming into the league. His breakout season, I believe in his second year, was hampered by a Lisfranc, but he was a wide receiver 1 or 2 in that first month he played. Extremely talented wide receiver, produced like a monster at Minnesota. The Ravens didn't bring anyone in. Mark Andrews keeps getting hurt. Zay Flowers is a good wide receiver, but he's not an elite wide receiver. So there's room for Rashad Bateman to eat with Lamar Jackson. Now, I know you guys don't want to hear that, but they could be real dangerous if he's healthy.
Hey, as long as he's on my team and there's some money at stake, I don't mind it too much. Seems like CMC's the consensus number 1 If he's off the board at 1 and you've got the 2nd overall pick, Kev, who's your selection?
See, that's the thing. PPR, full PPR, CD Lamb might be the 1st overall pick regardless. So that's putting that aside. In half PPR, where, a reception is not as valuable, I don't hate going Bijan. I don't hate going Brees. It's a toss-up. Coin flip. If you can stomach the Jets and banking on the Jets with your 2nd overall pick, your 1st-round pick in general, I don't mind going Brees. I personally would go Bijan because that offense looks so explosive. And if Kirk Cousins doesn't work out, they have Michael Penix as a backup. So you have outs to upside and a really good floor there. So, yeah, half PPR, I'd probably go Bijan.
Love it.
So for the newer players out there, Kev, a lot of you guys had developed kind of hard and fast rules or rules of thumb for playing fantasy. Do you have a few of those that you could share with some of the newer players who might not know what they're doing?
Good players on good teams, baby. Good players on good teams. Literally, when you see a wide receiver have a great season, you're like, go look at his quarterback. CeeDee Lamb, yeah. Dak Prescott, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, literally A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, Tyreek Tua. Not to say, Tyreek can't succeed with a worse quarterback, but a lot of these guys, wide receivers typically are tied to good quarterback play. That's why Malik Neighbors, if he gets pushed up, you're just like, I could live without Daniel Jones as this guy's quarterback. I can live without having to bank on Daniel Jones in week 17 for my fantasy football playoffs. So good players on good teams, first and foremost. Also, don't draft players who are injured coming into the season because easier to re-injure, things can linger. Just there's enough variance. Don't lean into it even more.
Good stuff. Make sure you guys go throw Kev a follow out there on the social media streets at RotoSurgeon. Appreciate him hopping on here, helping us get ready for the draft. Go check out that Patreon as well because he also helps you guys out throughout the season with different decisions, roster moves, etc. Go follow him at RotoSurgeon. Kev, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Reflog. You guys are the best. Appreciate you.
For sure. See ya. Good stuff there, Chris. You feeling good about your draft?
I am. He mentioned several players that I had taken, a pretty good evaluation on the guys who I've taken there. I feel pretty good about it. So we'll see. I got an A overall. You know how you get instant feedback on your draft? I got an A initially. So we'll see. It's only down from here, I figure, the way my seasons normally work.
That usually makes me nervous, because like the projections, I'm projected to finish first, and then I end up making missing the playoffs altogether. So I am the reigning defending champion of my league, and my friend group takes it pretty serious. I've got like a trophy at my house. I should have brought it in today, but I have a trophy for my league, so I'm trying to defend it, man. I'm trying to keep that trophy at the Padone household. So a lot of competition out there.
We're going to shift gears and talk a little baseball, guys. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back with Bringing the Heat with Jensen Lewis right after this. Welcome back to the Big Play Cleveland Show. We are ready to talk a little bit of Guardians baseball, which has been a little hot and cold lately. We're bringing in Jensen Lewis for our Bring the Heat segment. But first, who wants to do our Northeast Factory Direct shout out?
I got you, Gab. Our Bringing the Heat segment is brought to you by Northeast Factory Direct. Our friends at Northeast Factory Direct have a fantastic range of mattresses. Whether you're into the plush feel of a pillow top, the cooling comfort of gel foam, the support of memory foam, or that classic bounce of an inner spring, they've got it all at Northeast Factory Direct. You guys know I've been moving. That's a huge undertaking, getting that mattress up the steps. The best part is Northeast Factory Direct offers 60-month special financing. So upgrading your sleep is easy and affordable. They cut out the middleman. They skipped the fancy storefronts, bringing you the top quality mattresses straight from the United States factory at an unbeatable price. You can shop online anytime by going to northeastfactorydirect.com or visit them in person in any of their stores. And guys, if you haven't checked out their stores yet, go into the store, check them out. It's unlike a normal furniture store. You're not getting pestered. Nobody's following you around, chasing you down, trying to get a sale. It's truly a unique furniture buying experience. So check them out in Cleveland, Euclid, Macedonia, North Canton, and make sure to ask about the Big Play bonus. You'll thank us later for that. All right, we're bringing in... Jensen Lewis to bring some heat with us. Jensen, the Guardians might need some sleep. They might need a mattress.
No, the bats are already asleep.
From Northeast Factory Direct. Yeah, the bats maybe have gotten too much sleep at Northeast Factory. What in the world is going on with our Guardians offense right now?
Yeah, Nick, it's been pretty streaky, right? And I think the one thing you're looking at is every season teams go in spurts, right? And I think facets of your team get hot and cold. And right now, there's just no getting around that this offense has been as streaky at any point in the season as we've seen thus far. And not the ideal time for that to happen going on such a critical road trip. You get swept by the Brewers and really not a lot of offensive firepower to ride home about. Now you got to go to the boogie down in New York and try and overcome a starting rotation that is pretty solid in its own right. Now, I think you look at the glass half full part of this and say, all right, they've not played consistently the last 2 to 3 weeks. They're still in first place. The glass half empty is, okay, the bottom's starting to fall out a little bit, and where is this offense going to rebound? Because you just look at what they have coming up in these next 3 series with the Yankees and the Rangers and then the Royals. You know, this is really going to be a time where they've got to look in the mirror and understand, if you take what you've done in April and May and try and channel that into the next 10 days, you're going to be fine. But if you start trying to reinvent the wheel here a little bit and do too much at once to come out of an offensive slump, that's where losing streaks get prolonged. They did a good job getting out of the 7-gamer against Minnesota. Now they got to kind of go back and say, all right, let's do what we did in the first couple of months of the season. We'll be okay.
And it seems like, Jensen, they're so streaky as well. You know, I feel like I've told myself 3 times in the last week, this is the biggest game of the year. And they keep finding ways to get into new biggest games of the year. You know, since August 3rd, they've won 5 straight. Then they lost 7 straight. Then they won 5. Now they're on this little losing skid that they just had against the Brewers. How do you contain that and stop being such a roller coaster and really find your footing and find some momentum as we head into some actual real important games here?
Yeah, Nick, I mean, we know what Minnesota Twins fans felt like in April and May when they had, you know, the 12-game winning streak, and then they lost 8 in a row. And, you know, trying to find some semblance of consistency is tough in a marathon. But particularly at this point, I think this club a little bit more under the microscope, right, because of how much ground both Minnesota and Kansas City have made up. So all of a sudden, everything gets magnified. Each loss gets magnified. Your scoreboard watching way more at this time of the year than obviously you would in May and June. I think 2 things stand out for me. Number one, as long as you control the head-to-head matchups, you're going to be okay. And again, you don't want to look ahead, because I feel like an off day couldn't have presented itself any better than what it did on Monday. Anytime you get swept, whether it's home or away, sometimes you just need that day to kind of recalibrate. And hopefully, you know, that's what happens, not only for the New York series, but also now all of a sudden a critical homestand. And guys, we've watched Texas come in here plenty of years and play really well. Now they're out of the playoff race, but you still got Nathan Eovaldi on Thursday. You still have a team that hits very well here at Progressive Field. So the backdrop of that, plus Kansas City is going to come and be ready to come guns blazing as well for wanting to be as impactful as possible to finish out the month. I just think you have to keep things small, keep things simple. Austin had just said at the beginning of the year, if there was any time to live up to your credo of we take every day like it's a postseason game, let's do it. You know, this is prime time now. This is pennant chase. This is exactly what you want to have the opportunity to play for at the beginning of spring training and the beginning of your season. So I think they'll be okay as long as if they mind their fundamentals and they're really able to execute with runners in scoring position like they were in the first couple months of the season. I think they'll be okay.
You know, Jensen, amongst this roller coaster kind of up and down, we have seen some clarity when it comes to starting pitching, it seems. Does it look like the starting 5, Williams, Lively, Bybee, Boyd, Cobb, is that going to be our starting 5 going forward, you think? Are they going to get the majority of the work?
Yeah, barring an injury, Chris, you would expect that Boyd and Cobb get regular turns here, at least for the next couple of weeks. And unless there's just something that is so mind-numbingly ridiculous on the stat line, it's hard to see them not be a huge portion of that rotation moving forward. Now, when we get to the doubleheader day against Kansas City, interested to see who that 27th man would be, or that starting pitcher will be for that game, and we'll kind of see where the club is at that point. But I think for what this front office kind of telegraphed before the trade deadline, and what they eventually did there, getting Cobb and then having Boyd with all those rehab starts, getting ready to be a part of this rotation, you would assume that they are going to be guys that, in a way, you're happy to have healthy at this point, and not a lot of miles on their arms from having to pitch 2-3 months of the regular season already. At the same time, you're going to need all of them to be effective and to really continue to get some quality innings deep into ball games.
For sure. Jensen, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about AL Cy Young and Emmanuel Clase, and you told us that, hey, maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea throwing a little bit of pizza money out there on Clase, and I did just that right after you said it on our show. I got him at 90-1 odds.
Okay.
Today, at the time that we're recording this, he's crept his way all the way down to 36-1 odds. Just a couple weeks removed from you saying that, Jensen. How are we feeling about that as we update, Tariq Skubal, Corbin Burns, probably still our favorites. We think Clase might still have an outside shot here.
Yeah, I think so, Nick. And obviously this is going to get really intriguing now that AJ Hinch came out after the Little League Classic and said that Tariq Skubal perhaps has taken his final regular turn through their rotation. They're going to be pretty mindful of his innings now that Detroit is effectively eliminated from postseason contention. They're going to do whatever they have to do to make sure he's healthy through the finish line. Now, whether that is reduction in complete workload, whether he only takes a turn every 6th, maybe 7th day, that remains to be seen. If you're looking at it too, I think Corbin Burns all of a sudden has to vault into real serious competition to be the favorite. If what AJ Hinch is saying is correct, that brings us to Emmanuel Clase. I'll keep my same headline with you guys as I had a couple weeks ago. Guardians have to be in contention for the 1 seed, and he's got to remain pretty much perfect, or at least the way that he's gone up to September 1st. If that's the case, now all of a sudden you play it week by week, and you start looking at the odds board. If Tariq Skubal gets his workload drastically reduced or maybe even shut down, I think Corbin Burns is probably the guy to look at this point, at least this week. Now, you take that week by week, because you guys remember when it was Corey Kluber and Felix Hernandez years ago, it literally came down to the final 2, maybe 3 starts, and Corey Kluber went ahead by a hair at the end. So, yeah, love the value, as we would say, where you're at right now, Nick, no question about it. But a couple of things have to remain consistent for Clase to be a viable candidate.
Awards are nice, but honestly, the longevity for him of the season is important too. Like, are you worried about him getting burnt out at all? There's only one other guy in the top 25 of saves leaders who has more than 52 appearances. That's Hader, 55. I don't know. Clase's been so consistent. I just want to make sure we've got him when it matters.
Yeah, it's a great point, Gab, and one that I've kind of talked about on national radio a little bit from outsiders looking in, saying, especially those 4 saves in 4 consecutive days. And I said, well, if you look at the buildup and the workload, and I think that's the 2 themes to keep in mind here, is if these are arduous, really intense outings, and not to say that close on a major league game is not, but guys, it's been relatively easy on the pitch count side. I mean, 10 pitches, 11 pitches. It's not like he's going into the low 20s when he's out there and having to deal with runners on base. I mean, I think if you look back and see how many 1, 2, 3 save opportunities that he's converted, it's a hell of a lot. And that's great, because at this point of the year, you want him as fresh as possible in that regard to be able to clinch these big time series, and also to be able to navigate if he's got to get an out in the 8th inning and come back and pitch the 9th inning. So I think they've done a really good job, Stephen Vogt and the staff have, of not running him out there in the high teens, low 20s as far as pitches go. That's really what ends up getting you into trouble, is if you're throwing 20 plus pitches every day, 2 out of 3, 4 out of 6, that's where you get burnout much quicker than having to get up, throw your inning, and be done for the day.
For sure. Hey, straight ahead, the Guardians are playing the Yankees in New York this week. Then we've got to ask Jensen about why the Guardians are so good here in Cleveland. Don't go anywhere, because we're answering those questions when we return on the Big Play Cleveland Show right after this. Welcome on back into the Big Play Cleveland Show right here on the Big Play Network. We're joined by Jensen Lewis talking all things Guardians and MLB. Jensen, the Guardians are playing the Yankees in New York this week. You know that's always a little bit of a rivalry when we get to go up there to the Bronx and play the Yankees.
A little bit.
What are we expecting?
Big rivalry right there.
Big rivalry for us.
For us.
It's a big one for us.
What do you want to see out of the Guardians in this series against the Bronx Bombers?
I mean, ideally, Nick, you take 2 of 3 to at least have the opportunity for the tiebreaker for the season series. And for people that don't realize how that works, if both the Yankees and the Guardians end up with 3 wins versus each other, the next tiebreaker is what they call intra-division. And that record is the cumulative wins and losses and winning percentage against your divisional opponents. So that will play out here in September. But you got to be able to get the 2 out of 3 against New York to have that be a viable thing. So right now, that could be in the American League East with both Baltimore and New York entering this week tied atop the American League East. Houston has won 10 of 11 entering this week. They're only 4 games back in the loss column as of Monday. It's a real fight now for the top 2 spots and that really essential bye of the wild card round in the American League side of the postseason. It's ironic, Nick, that both the American League and National League are so tight with 10 days left, at least entering this week in the regular season. You have a legit race in all 3 divisions of the American League, Central, the East, and the West. I can't remember a time where we've entered at least the final week of August where that's been the case. You've usually had one that's completely wrapped up. But, man, it's a fight to the finish, not only for your divisional championship, but for those top 2 seeds as well.
Hey, Jensen, what's it like playing in New York?
Well, Chris, I had the unique pleasure of being part of that last team ever to win a playoff series there in Old Yankee Stadium in 2007, where we won in Game 4. Nothing like shutting up a bunch of people in New York, and it felt so good then. It still feels great now to be that trivia answer. But I think also in New Yankee Stadium, when you kind of see how this fan base is, and I would take Yankee fans over Red Sox fans any day. They know their stuff. They want their team to win. You appreciate that. They're going to get on you. They're going to rib you. But it's a little more corporate now. It's not where you had the fans, the bleacher bums out in left field that were all over you. I mean, from the time you walked out there, if you guys remember Old Yankee Stadium, the foul territory, I mean, those dugouts, you're really up against it. Those fans got in you and you felt it. And it drove your adrenaline level up a bunch. But again, there's nothing like playing in the Big Apple. It's the biggest stage, the biggest stars, and obviously the most media attention there. So yeah, anytime you get an opportunity as a fan to go up there and see it, it's awesome. But an experience second to none getting to play in the Old Yankee Stadium and New Yankee Stadium for my career.
Hey, Jensen, before we let you go here, we're going to ask our direct question of the week, brought to you by Northeast Factory Direct. Obviously, most teams are better playing at home, but really there's a sparkling disparity for our Guardians. Why do you think we're so much better at Progressive Field than we are on the road this season? 38-20 at home, 34-32 away. I don't know. Is it going to be the wind tunnel answer, or is there a little bit more than that?
That certainly helped, Gab. And I don't think any pitcher, at least for the Guardians, is going to apologize for having that added offensive boost, if you will. I really believe it. And I'm just not just saying it just because, we're fans and being on the media side now instead of being a player. There's a distinct difference. I was telling someone about the renovations, and they're like, this stadium felt a lot bigger before. And I said, yeah, capacity-wise, it was 45,000 my rookie year in 2007. And I'll never forget Trot Nixon, our teammates and our leader that year, coming over from the Red Sox and saying, we hated coming in here. It was such a hostile environment. And I credit the fans this year for really showing up, for making that a difference for the players here to know that you're going to play in front of 30,000 plus a night. And I know that the number seems a lot smaller than 45, and it is, but the feel of it, guys, the noise level and the ability to really benefit from that. Oh, by the way, when you have the best bullpen in baseball, it helps because that Gardiac Magic has got a chance to be there every single night. So I'll take it. I mean, I'll take how this team has really just taken their game to another level when they're at Progressive Field. And as you guys know, in the postseason, home field advantage means everything. Let's hope that that's the difference maker for them in 2024.
Awesome. Jensen, thanks so much for bringing the heat with us again today. And thank you to our friends at Northeast Factory Direct. Be sure to check them out at any of their locations in Cleveland, Euclid, Macedonia, or North Canton. And remember to ask them about the Big Play bonus. Thanks so much for joining us.
You got it, guys. Talk next week.
Thanks, Jensen.
For sure. Great stuff out of Jensen Lewis. We'll be back with more of the Big Play Cleveland Show right after this.
Welcome back to the Big Play Cleveland Show. Do we have enough time for fill in the blank?
Yeah, we got to hit it now, and it's presented by Affinity Whole Health.
Affinity Whole Health offers personalized treatment plans to help people feel better, Nick. Whether you're struggling with weight loss, low energy, muscle loss, or poor sleep, they can help with all of it. Affinity Whole Health provides expert guidance and support to help you safely reach your health goals. And they really have Ohio covered with locations in Cleveland and down by me in Columbus. And Nick, I was there last week. I did my evaluation. Today, I'm going to be talking with my consultant because the blood work has come back. So now I'll have a chance to find out exactly what the picture looks like for me and then what the path looks like to health for me going forward.
For sure. And I think we have a package of what that consultation was like for our guy, Chris. Ryan, let's roll it.
Big Play Sports Network is proud to partner with Affinity Whole Health. With Affinity Whole Health, you can feel younger again, with treatment plans tailored to each patient by their team of practitioners. Their simple 3-step process includes a free evaluation with dedicated patient care coordinators, lab work, and a consult with a licensed medical practitioner. You can feel amazing and live better today with Affinity Whole Health by stopping into one of their 4 locations in Cleveland, Columbus, Indianapolis, and Chicago. Get started with a free evaluation today. You can also receive a customized T-Core 20 program treatment delivered right to your home. Invest in your health and live better with Affinity Whole Health.
We love Affinity Whole Health.
Welcome back to the Big Play Cleveland Show and McNeil. And you will be getting your results today. We'll be anxious to hear how that goes.
Can't wait to see what the treatment plan is going to look like for me.
Should be a lot of fun. Chris,
Speaking of coming back from injuries,
Yes.
we've got our fill in the blank, and I think the first one is about a guy coming back from injury.
Yeah, we're just going to hit you with one because we've run out of time on this show. But Deshaun Watson should play blank possessions in the preseason finale.
I think he's got to play at least a quarter. I'm going to put it at his feet, though, Nick. I think that he has to come to and say, hey, I want to play a certain number of downs that are going to get me ready for the season. And he's got to be prepared game one. I don't put the onus as much on the organization as I do on him. We paid him a lot of money. He's got to be ready to go game one, which means playing a little bit in the preseason.
And so many people, Chris, are talking about the Browns' offensive line situation. Hey, it is what it is. This is the National Football League. Injuries happen. We were told when Deshaun Watson came to town, a franchise quarterback elevates some of the inefficiencies across the rest of the roster. To me, Chris, that means Deshaun needs to be the guy that elevates this Browns team this year. That all starts playing that last preseason game. I don't want to hear anything about rust come week one. We have actual NFL athletes on this network that say the preseason is important. Deshaun has to play. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Big Play Cleveland Show. We'll do it again for you guys next week. We got a ton of fun stuff in the works, so keep tuning in to us, and we will talk to you guys then. Thank you.